General Vagon has called the Battle of France is over. The Battle of Britain is about to begin.
Welcome to the Lead Pursuit Podcast, a podcast covering Blood Red Skies, a game of World War II aerial combat. Well, thanks for joining us this evening for the Lead Pursuit Podcast. Tonight we're going to talk about a couple different things, a couple different ways to do your games, a couple different products that have come out. But I obviously have Chris and Brett back. Unfortunately, I know, guys, you have to write in and tell me who you want to host the show besides me and my winning personality. But Chris, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, man. It's just, and more quarantine. So I can't wait for this to be over.
Brett, how are you doing, brother?
Doing good. We're phase 1 here in Florida, I guess. So we're starting to loosen restrictions.
Nice. So you can go back to the nude beaches and you can do all that again?
Yep. Nude beaches are open now, and probably soon I'll be able to get my nails done and that kind of thing.
Excellent. I know you've been waiting on that. Well, let's jump right in and talk about some of the things that we've seen in the Intel update, because I'm sure everyone's question is, what the heck is coming out? Because nobody knows what Warlord's doing, what other game companies are doing. They're slowly getting themselves back into the grind of shipping things. As we talked about in the happy hour, we talked, I think, in the last episode as well. The crew over at Warlord has just been bringing people back incrementally. So haven't seen any new drops specifically from them. I've heard a lot of rumors and a lot of people talking about some things. I've also heard some updates on a couple of the people that we support. So miscellaneous minis, for what I'm hearing, is that they're focusing on production right now, not necessarily making new custom ones, because, of course, with all of us chained inside our houses. Oh, wait, no, I don't live in Michigan. All of us restricted inside our houses. The production and the building up of miniatures and painting of miniatures and putting decals on has gone through the roof. So they are obviously busy. AIM is still backed up, running somewhere between 6 to 8 weeks total.
We need to get that guy some fiber.
I need to figure out how we take all of his stuff, mass produce it with the same great quality, and still he gets paid.
Yeah, that would be a definite plan.
Yeah, he has some good stuff out there, and obviously he's just backed up. He's working as hard as he can. Molds are giving out, so he's having to redo molds. So it's be patient dealing with the AIM guys. Some other things that just came out. Obviously, if you saw on Instagram, you saw on our Facebook feed, the airstrike markers from Just Lasered are done and finally in production. I don't know when it's going to hit his website. I checked again. It's not up there in live for ordering. But if you want those things and you're in the UK, please drop Mel over at Just Lasered an email and say, hey, man, I really want to order those new airstrike markers that still aren't on your website. And then he'll probably hook you up and get you in an order for those. We've got some coming to the U.S. We've got some more of the original ones we had from Litco getting produced. So we should have a bunch of those for U.S.-based gamers here shortly.
Those ones you posted up look really nice.
They're good. I will be honest, Litco right now is kind of my gold standard for mass-produced acrylic. And theirs, I think, are a little bit nicer than the ones from Mel.
Those are the ones that we got to select all the different colors for and everything.
Right. So we looked at the colors we all picked were for Mel's. We already had the colors for the Litco ones, and those were the sets that we sent out at the kind of the beginning, probably beginning of the fall last year. But they're awesome, but they're more expensive and they take a little bit longer to get made than Mel's Mel's production line, where he cranks out all that acrylic for us. So I love working with Mel. He's made all of our template stuff. He's made our airstrike markers. He does a great job over there in the UK. Unfortunately, he's not here, so it cost me an arm and a leg to ship it over here. The other big piece of information we're going to announce is we've been talking for a while about Gathering of Eagles, which is scheduled to be the first weekend in June. As should be no surprise to anyone, the restrictions are still not easing up necessarily to make long-distance travel work. So we all talked on the team this morning that's been putting together the event, and we decided between us and Warlord and some of the local people in Indianapolis to go virtual for this one. So like a lot of the other virtual events that are going on, we're going to have a variety of different Discord channels, variety of different video streams between YouTube, Facebook, some other mediums, so that we can all interact over the weekend. we'll probably only do one day, unless all of you jump up and down and say, yes, absolutely, we want to spend our Saturday and Sunday in front of our computers staring at little airplanes that we're not actually moving around the board and talking about little plastic airplanes. If you all want to do that, that's great. We were thinking of holding it to one day, but some more of that information will come out in the coming weeks, and we'll get you all the information on how to register for that. And that way we can all participate. Think of it as one big Blood Red Skies happy hour with not all the beer. Maybe we'll have all the beer. I don't know. We'll figure that part out.
That is the one good thing about freaking doing virtual is there's always a liquor license.
There's always a liquor license, and if I fall down, I don't fall down the stairs at Adepticon. I just fall next to my desk here. So I'll have the cats probably pooping on me, but who cares? Anyway, so moving on from the Intel update. Hanger, has anyone picked up anything new in the mail? Anything worth talking about?
I just finished some ME262s, and I'm starting in on some DO17s.
I'm still working on LA5s. I've got Flurry wash on them, and they're about half cleaned off. They're decaled up, and got to seal them and finish their canopies. But they're coming along, and then I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to jump into next.
Well, at least what rolled in my Amazon package was my Eye of Sauron, as I call it. So my new webcam. So hopefully that'll get us a chance to do a few battle reports, a couple tactics reports, and be able to film some halfway decent video without it looking like I'm using the webcam on my computer, which might as well be like a 360p camera, and I could draw it with a crayon probably better, although I'm in danger of eating the crayons. But anyway, so we're going to move on. Hey, you got to make a Marine joke when you're a Marine. That's all right. Okay, so the main topic for tonight, what are we talking about? Well, not everybody plays Blood Red Skies the same. Some people don't want to just beat up on their opponent and walk away and go drink a beer. They want to beat up on the same opponent over and over and over again. And they want to actually link these games with a storyline and a consistent squadron. I mean, I know that sounds crazy, but there are people who do that in other gaming systems as well. So we're going to talk campaigns tonight. Obviously, Brett is kind of our campaign guy on the Lead Pursuit podcast, but we've also brought Steve Toth on. And you may know Steve as Steve Meteor Man Toth, or Steve the Model Man Toth, that guy that's done a lot of good work with the 3D models, producing some aircraft that aren't currently in print with Warlord right now, or with AIM for that matter. And so, Steve, really good to have you on the podcast tonight.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me, Doug. It's cool to be on here. I listen to them all the time, so it's cool to be on with you guys.
Yeah, we're glad to have you on. And, for once, it's not you and I beating our head against the desk trying to figure out how to do something in Tabletop Sim, trying to at least get the pixels to move in the right direction.
Yeah, you're not kidding. That it's the progress that's making. I feel like it's making a ton of progress and just refinement over the last, month or so. But certainly there's some road bumps along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. You've done some great work, specifically here recently, some things that are probably going to drop in version 2 with changing how the models interact and some things. So I really appreciate that, even though I swear every time the conversation starts with Brett saying, hey, this ought to be really easy. I think Steve can do this. And then you and I look at Brett and go, really? Did you just volunteer us for that? Thanks.
Minor upgrades, that's all.
Yeah, minor upgrades that cause us to be staring at the screen for hours going, why is it not working? It's so simple. But anyway, enough about Tabletop Sim. Campaigns. So I'll throw the question out to Steve first, and Brett, you can pitch in, but why a campaign? Why not just play different variants with different squadrons and other stuff? But why campaign at all in Blood Red Skies?
Man, I think the neat thing about it is just, at least for me, is that continuity between games and getting that attachment to your squadron or your model or a certain plane or something like that. It's just really cool to keep that going between games. And honestly, it's led me to learn a lot about stuff that I didn't know about historically. I'm a aviation fanatic, but I'm not really an aviation historian. So being an engineer, I love the airplanes, I love the machinery, but doing the campaign has led me to a lot of that more historic stuff that I, wasn't really aware of.
Yeah, when we were first looking at, I guess a few episodes back when Sandstorm first dropped, and I read through that, right away geeking out about, oh man, look at the potential of this. Imagine you could play these things and keep on going. And that's where it all started for me.
You geek out about anything new that drops, whether it's a scenario or campaign. So I have to take that with a grain of salt. And I'll admit, when you first said, hey, I've dug into this Sandstorm thing, it looks really cool, I was kind of skeptical because I'm like, what would Warlord be giving away for free in a free PDF? I mean, really, can it be all that good? And then I actually read through it. And I think it's pretty neat. I know you guys have done some modifications and kind of made some tweaks and combined some systems, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But I was actually surprised that something that was a free PDF on the website had some new aircraft cards, some new trait or some new equipment cards, things like that, and I guess one positive trait in there for can opener. And so there were some other cool things that were in there. I was like, this has some potential, but I'm not really a campaign gamer. Obviously, I guess none of us really have been in the in the last couple months with the way the social distancing and the isolation works. But now with Tabletop Sim, you guys are starting to play a campaign, right?
Yeah, and that's been cool too because I really there's not really anybody around me that plays, and I love the models, and I love collecting the models, and I love the painting, and I love the hands-on creative side of the hobby. But there's very few options from besides going up and playing a game with my old man, just a casual game, to actually play the game. So it's cool to get into Tabletop Sim and actually get to play some of the game and collect those models, but actually get to play through it.
Brett, what are some of the things you saw kind of going into Tabletop Sim that were a little bit different than when we'd been playing the games, around the table that kind of affected how the campaign flows?
Well, I guess to start off, I would say Steve and I started playing just kind of casually, really just to get more familiar with the game. Because, I've done a lot of play testing with you, but a lot of times we start those games right off the bat. You already have a preset scenario you want to run. And so when we would work together on those, everything was kind of preset. And it didn't often give me an opportunity to exercise like the pre-game setup steps and some of those other things. So those were less familiar to me. I mean, I know how the aircraft move and some of the basic order of operations, but when you start getting into the different scenarios and the details about the different deployments and how you roll for this and that, I wasn't familiar with that. But we started just playing regular box missions on Tabletop Simulator, and we started getting more familiar with those and seeing, oh man, this was really cool. I mean, depending on what you roll up, you get a different game every single time. And that started our conversations about the potential for Sandstorm or building a campaign of our own that was kind of based on Sandstorm, and that's how we kind of got rolling on it. But that's what I found different from the beginning was just playing through regular box games using the pregame setup right from the rule book. It kind of pointed us in that direction, I guess.
Well, so you guys made some modifications. Obviously, you went out and looked at a couple other campaign systems. What were some of the things that you guys jumped in and specifically said, hey, I want to do a little bit different. I want to add a little bit more flavor?
Well, we got together when we decided, hey, let's do this. Let's really start exploring this. You want to build a roster? We just did it strictly off of what's available in Sandstorm, not really knowing a whole lot about it. I mean, I think both of us had read through it and stuff, but so that's what we did. We just busted out Sandstorm. We got on Discord and started rolling dice to build our rosters and stuff. And we realized right away as we started going through the steps that I think, Steve, you were the one that actually said it. You're like, hey, what about this thing? There's some, I know I saw that somewhere. What was that?
Yeah, I remembered I felt like reading Sandstorm, there was something missing that I had read, and then just going back through the Ready Room, Andy had posted, I guess, like an auxiliary campaign idea, and it had a lot of the stuff for introducing new aircraft and time frame of the war, which Sandstorm didn't really have anything. So we started implementing what year we were going to start, what planes we were going to start with, and then we kind of meshed those two campaigns together and settled on our final rules that we're playing.
Yeah, a big part of what's in Sandstorm was really what we wanted. The way you spend XP, the way you build your roster, your individual pilots, your starting skill levels, all that stuff is straight out of Sandstorm. But what we learned is that Sandstorm, of course, it's Mediterranean theater, but it's actually a campaign that's designed to be about 5 games long. And we were thinking, man, we want something a little longer than that. And that's where Steve's recollection of something he had read before, Andy's campaign rules, that's designed to cover and span really the whole war in any theater you want to start with. I guess the best way to describe it, it's kind of like, there's a chart that's kind of like the charts you see for theater and doctrine cards right in the Airstrike book, but it has blocks of time, and it gives you, based on faction you're playing and theater and time frame, what aircraft you have available to you, and you can kind of just go from there. So we incorporated that kind of building component to this idea we had, used a lot of the components for Sandstorm, and then Andy's rules had a lot more crunchy stuff for things like aircraft damage and potential pilot injury stuff if somebody has to bail out and that kind of thing. That part's a lot more compressed in the Sandstorm campaign, but we liked it. We thought that might be kind of cool, and so we have kind of incorporated those elements of both into one system that we're using right now.
That's pretty cool. Well, and this may seem like an off-the-wall question. I'll show you where it's going in a minute. But Steve, what's your wargaming background? Are you a video game guy that's now gotten into board games? You're an old role-playing guy, miniatures games. What kind of brought you to Blood Red Skies to start with?
I actually have always played tabletop games, and I actually my biggest hobby that I'm in is actually miniature football. And if anybody remembers the old vibrating metal board game where the guys run around, about in the early 2000s, people figured out how you could actually get those guys to run how you want. And there's tournaments all over the country that's basically football on a miniature board, right? And I'd always wanted to get into wargaming. I've seen all the other strategy games, and somebody turned me on to Flames of War and was looking at YouTube videos of that. And next thing you know, I was down the YouTube rabbit hole and stumbled onto some Blood Red Skies videos. And what was great about it is it seemed like a really simple game to just pick up and learn how to play. And then once, especially now getting into Airstrike and the campaign, the depth that's there out of that really simple mechanic just, just makes the game incredibly fun to play.
Well, that's the funny thing, seeing the different backgrounds people come from. For nerds like Chris and I, who come from a role-playing game background, we're used to emotionally investing in characters and in members of a party, and now extrapolate it to members of the squadron. I think it's going to be interesting to see the two of you play through a campaign system, because you guys don't come from that kind of character-based invested background. And I think Brett alluded to it when we were talking offline one time. He's like, there's a point where you go, I'm just going to run my aircraft off the board because I don't want this guy to get shot down. Have you guys started running into that kind of situation in your games?
Yeah, that's already actually happened. We played one game so far, and a couple of interesting things happened. One, in the game, I had a situation where my guy was, kind of in trouble. It was a twin engine. It was a 110. It already had a boom chit on it, and there was some hurricanes around him, and it might have been dicey. And I thought, I should probably get this guy off the table because I'd really hate to lose him. I need this guy in a future game. And our rosters are pretty thin on skill level. Most of our guys are 2s and 3s. Most of them are 2s, actually. And he was one of my pilot skill 3 guys. So I was, really kind of fearful losing old Hans there. So I flew him off the table. And we were joking about it afterwards. We were like, man, things like that are decisions that never would have occurred to me if we were just playing, a normal one-off game. But you have to start thinking about the potential for things later. And I've noticed, too, there's other things that may affect decision making, like as these guys begin to level up. I think we're building our rosters for our next game. I'm thinking, well, I got to put this guy in again because he's got to get some more points so he can continue to level up. If I sit him out, he loses the opportunity to get the points. Stuff like that is never even a part of just a one-off game. And the other thing I mentioned, there was a couple things that have happened that are unique to this kind of investment in the characters and stuff. I've already started to get, it's already been a little taunting and stuff. Steve sent me a post in Messenger. It was like a wanted poster or whatever of a Luftwaffe pilot. It was my squadron commander. He had like some kind of wanted poster, he said, floating around the officers club at the
Nice.
RAF squadron headquarters, I guess. So I'm like, oh man,
Yeah.
it's already started, you know.
Excellent. A little bit of banter there. Well,
Yeah.
Steve, what's your take so far on, in a sense, building characters, building members of your squadron that you're now invested in a little bit emotionally?
It's been really fun. A couple of things with that. He was saying the pilot skill. He has one guy that's a pilot skill 4, and right now he's the only guy in the whole campaign that's a pilot skill 4. Everybody else is 3s and 2s. And there were a couple times just in that first game where I was like, man, I have an opportunity here where I can maybe get a tailing on this pilot skill 4. Maybe took some risks that I wouldn't normally have, thinking, oh, if I could get that high level pilot out of the game early, kind of even the tables for my guys. And also this last game, it was kind of neat. They're not in the Sandstorm rules, but they are in the auxiliary campaign rules that were put out with the plane damage and bailing out and stuff like that. The post-game stuff is pretty cool, even when you're done playing, where he had gotten hit, not gotten shot down, but took damage on his airplane. So there was a chart you had to go to roll to see how bad the damage was. Depending how that rolled, I think Brett elected to bail out instead of roll for the damage of the plane. So he bailed out, which then went to another roll to see if he was hurt. But it also, because he bailed out, caused him to lose that plane for the next game. So it's just really neat to see how it's just going to evolve over the whole course of the campaign.
Yeah, all kinds of bad things can happen. I mean, if a guy gets a boom chit on him, you have to go to that aircraft damage table, which might be not a big deal, right? It could not end perilously, could be no problem, but it has the potential to go really south. In my case with that one, it was because I flew off the table and he had some damage. So not only did I have to resolve some damage stuff, but because he flew off the table, I had to take a maneuver check. I failed my maneuver check, which meant that because of his damage, he wasn't going to make it back home. And then I had to figure out exactly how bad it was going to be. And he didn't. I think some of the options are he land successfully, no problem, or crash with some kind of damage and potential injury to the pilot. But you have the potential to avoid some of that potential catastrophe by trying to bail out. I made the decision like, okay, I'll lose the airplane, but I'll try to bail out, and maybe the odds on that chart will be a little better than dying outright or something in some fiery mishap at a forced landing. And my guy bailed out successfully and wasn't injured, but I lost the plane, like you said. So I'll have to replace that aircraft at some point if I want to have another one.
So how do you replace aircraft? Do you burn experience points? Do you get so many points a turn of supplies or whatever that you can either repair or rebuild?
Yeah, the squadron. So your individual pilots build XP based on their individual actions, and the squadron gets XP based on your performance towards the mission and maybe some other things. And you can then use your squadron points. Squadron points could be used for a couple things: purchasing new aircraft and recruiting new pilots, getting replacement pilots. Individual pilots use their XP to level up to the next higher skill level, and I think you can also use XP once you become A status to purchase additional ace traits. So
that's pretty cool. Yeah, it's making me want to send you the old copy of Thunderbolt Apache Leader, because there's a lot of similarities there with the cool things that you can do to There's always encounters whenever you're coming back from the battle area. So you could have had a thoroughly successful mission, gone out, destroyed the enemy. You come back and all of a sudden one of your aircraft has a hydraulic failure. So you go through a very similar set of charts like that. And you go, all right, do I want to take this back and land? Do I want to eject? If I eject, do I have a problem with getting picked up by the SAR assets? So sometimes you lose the airplane and the pilot. So yeah, that's kind of cool. There's got that level of depth for everything.
Well, it's kind of fun. I mean, it's in just building the squadron initially. It doesn't have any game impact, but you roll on, what each individual pilot's pre-war background is and what his top 3 personality traits are. It just kind of gives it a little flavor. I mean, actually, I think a couple times I referred to it. There was a decision point where I could take like kind of a big risk, or and actually refer to that pilot's personality traits to see, is he going to chicken out or is he going to go for it because he's fearless, that kind of thing. That was just kind of fun little, instead of just rolling a dice for it or just, I kind of was able to refer back to the narrative, I guess, and play that. So that was kind of fun. And I know Steve and I were talking a little bit about it. I think he's probably taken it a step further just in his own record keeping. I think he said he's made like a spreadsheet to kind of keep track of his guys. What have you done there, Steve?
Yeah, so really all I did was I just, in Sandstorm there, I think it was Sandstorm, had a pilot roster sheet in it.
Right. On the
Yeah,
back end
and
of the
so
whole
all I
PDF.
did is I just kind of took that and just made it so I can easily update it, between games, because it's a lot. Like he said, there's Squadron XP, and then there's Pilot XP, and then you're also tracking how many kills each pilot gets, because they have to have a certain amount of kills to go to the next status. And then I think Brett's even taking it farther than that, where he's giving, true life Luftwaffe awards to guys who knock bombers out of formation and all kinds of stuff. So I think he's even gone further than that with the record keeping. But it's just cool, even just to play some of the different scenarios is really neat. I had never played anything but your pretty basic dogfight scenario. So, to set up one, I think we played Bounced one night. That wasn't part of their campaign that really got us thinking. And then this first campaign game was some type of airstrike scenario. I forget which one, Brett.
Oh, it's Priority Target, Scenario 7.
Yeah, but it was cool, because then you're, not only are you thinking about getting those bombers there, but making sure your pilots, you're not risking the pilots to succeed in the mission. And it's just really linking everything together. It's just really, really a fun gaming experience. And it makes me want to, playing it on Tabletop Sim now, it's funny, it's made me want to go out and get a whole bunch of, I want to paint my squadron in real life. I want them in plastic, and I never thought you'd ever hear me say I'd want to paint RAF planes. I'm definitely a Pacific Theater, P-40, Corsair, Hellcat kind of guy, but I need to get an order of some RAF planes now so I can paint my squadron in real life.
It's kind of the same for me. I have all the 110s, but I'm gonna get another box of 110s just so I can paint these guys, because I have a scheme in mind. Yeah, it's
pathetic. You're horrible. You're a terrible person, but that's all right. You're keeping Warlord in business. So.
Yeah, 3-4 squadrons of 110s. Probably the only guy on the planet.
Yeah, Chris is going to be out there saying, "Okay, hey guys, I've got my my Russian forces fielded. Which ones do we want to do?" And Brett's going to say, "Oh no, I need to make some more Eastern Front."
Yeah, they've got to exactly.
Because I can't match up the exact year.
What year are we playing? So now I need to do winter scheme.
Yeah. Chris, it's going to be terrible. This
what's wrong with that?
Yeah, what's wrong with that? Yeah, this is not going to work out well for us.
We did something else that was kind of inspiring. Got us thinking a lot about it too. We read through the stuff from Two Fat Lardies. Oh gosh, what Squadron Forward? It's supposed to be that sort of not game specific rule set. It's I guess they do stuff for Bag the Hun, but they came out with the Squadron Forward campaign system to be sort of system agnostic, so you could apply it to whatever game, and it's really detailed. I mean, far more detailed than I think we're really prepared to jump into right now. I think what we've done by combining the kind of compressed Sandstorm stuff with Andy's campaign mechanics is really super juicy for where we want to be. But that Squadron Forward stuff is super detailed. I mean, it has...
Juicy. I don't think that was one of the search terms from Florida, though.
No, it was boats.
It was boats.
Florida man. So, the Squadron Forward thing is crazy. I mean, it has non-player character interactions that you have to roll on and stuff. So, and it's amusing, but that's where I got the Luftwaffe award idea. So it's just for my own amusement, but part of my post-game action is to roll up and see, make notes of what actions my guys did. And, that has game effect in the rules we're playing. But then as a side thing, just for my own entertainment, I can actually award my guys different flyer medals and stuff. I think I got a couple of guys in the last game that got their Iron Cross second class. It was kind of interesting.
That's actually pretty cool. It's funny because James, a friend of ours that dropped us the line on the podcast about using that set of rules, using Squadron Forward. He's a former Super Hornet Wizzo. It's kind of funny. He's like, it's one of those things. It has all of those rules, and you can integrate it, but it's got tons of rules. So it sounds like it's really a neat system, and I'll have to take a look at that as well, because I think there's a lot of cool things you can do in a campaign, but there does become a level of balancing. How much am I doing outside the campaign versus just the actual gameplay itself? I know we were talking offline, and I was mentioning Traveler, which is an old role-playing game that I used to play years ago, and you would spend, I think, almost as much time generating characters as you would playing the game, because there were so many options, and there were so many different things you could do, and you could decide, do I want this guy to be a scientist for 5 years and then leave the science corps or whatever and go be a mercenary, and you get different skills and you level up differently based off of that. And so I think some of that's pretty cool to introduce to Blood Red Skies, where you learn a little bit about each of your pilots' backgrounds. You can choose to have that impact the game or not as much as you want, but it gives a little bit of continuity from one dogfight game to the next. I think it'll be interesting to see you guys integrate that with more of the airstrike scenarios, because thankfully the airstrike scenarios, until you get down to the last one, aren't too mission specific. You can generally introduce any kind of bombers on striking any kind of target, and it all works out in there. It's only the last one that's kind of a forward battlefield area kind of target.
That's the one we're playing next. At the end of our last game, we decided to roll up, see what our next game, so we can start building our roster until our next game night. And that's the one we rolled for Mission 10. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, Mission 10 is just one of those that's interesting to see how it plays out, because there's a lot of different little tweaks you can make to it.
Well, the thing that's kind of neat about it is, and it's going to, one of the things I think will have the most significant impact on the game we'll play, is there's definitely a division on the table, my side, your side, and depending on where guys potentially get shot down, really I'll have a big, potentially long-term impact on our roster, because if a guy gets shot down on the enemy side, he's captured automatically. And, you roll later to see if maybe he escapes, but he might be gone forever. There's a chance you get him back, but it won't be right away.
Steve, don't shoot down Brett's guys on your side of the table. I don't want him jumping back on Facebook chat crying to us about how he lost his favorite Luftwaffe pilot, and he's in some Allied POW camp.
Yeah,
don't want to hear
I
it.
have some really, really nasty plans in my RAF internment camps too, so it'll be pretty ugly.
Well, there better be some banter on our Facebook chats when some of that happens. That's the least I expect out of all you guys.
You were talking about how we rolled for personality traits and pre-war background and stuff. That doesn't have any relevance and no impact on the game as we're playing it. But we mentioned the Squadron Forward stuff. It definitely does in that rule set. I mean, you'll roll a bunch of stuff, and certain, I don't know if you would call them extreme, but personality traits on either ends of the spectrum, if you end up rolling for those, they'll either have positive impacts on things you roll for later, or negative impacts on things you roll for later, whether it's something to do with reinforcements or resupply or some of those non-player character interactions that happen in that rule set. It's pretty impressive, the level of detail they go to in there. We haven't adopted any of those, but it's just kind of cool to see it. It's part of what got us excited about doing this. But anyway, I wanted to ask Chris, because he's been I think he sent some stuff today from was that Corsair Leader?
Yeah, I just sent you some pictures of the campaign cards, and not to throw DVG stuff out there, as fodder. I mean, it's copyrighted material, but it's a game that we've purchased, and it's got a bunch of maps, and there's just all those cards. I mean, they've got all these different scenarios, and there's definitely potential for porting some of that stuff over, or just using it as an idea to make some of your own stuff for campaigns. Because if you had campaigns we were playing, like, those are just really neat, because you've got like Rabal Island, and you've got like 1 through 24, and you look up 1 through 24, and there's a little card pack, and that's why I threw those cards out there on that one. Is it's like, what is mission, what is target 1? You go to the target deck and say, oh, okay, it's a ground headquarters, or it's an airfield, or it's you fighting zeros, you fighting bombers. So there's a lot of potential there for you to create You could even find ways to make it rapidly generate or randomly generate. You would just have to, in your campaign, you would have to have somebody on the other side that had the capability to do the things, all of the things. So when you roll up the mission, I don't know exactly how Sandstrike works, but when you said you guys are trying to determine what you're going to do with your mission, or you determine your roster and types of aircraft, does it get to that level? Or are you just looking at, like, we're going to do Hurricanes versus 110s, or we're going to do Hurricanes versus 109s, or is there a ground target? How exactly, when you say you're trying to come up with what you're doing, how do you do that?
Well, that's the real beauty of what Steve found, because that was the piece that was kind of missing, since we didn't really want to just play MTO. We kind of wanted to start early war, right? Battle of Britain kind of era, at least there. And that's what's in Andy's rule set, is that it's kind of like a calendar chart or whatever. So you pick the theater in a time frame in your faction, and it tells you what aircraft you have available to you. So kind of like how Sandstorm, that's laid out for you.
Yeah.
It's laid out for you on that chart. And so what is it, Steve? Is it like 4-month blocks? You can see that it definitely changes. There's a progression in what's available for factions and stuff as you go. Is that right?
They basically have it set up. There's it starts in 1940, and I forget what year it ends at, but there's a early, mid, and a late of each year. So there are 4-month blocks. And in those blocks, it tells you how many planes are available. So some of the planes are like plentiful, and you can have as many as you want. In just the section of the war that we're in, I know Brett's 110s have a limit on them, so he can only have so many 110s in his squadron. My Spitfire 2s have a limit on them. I can only have so many of those, which adds a whole nother level where, if you would get, if he lost that 110 last game, he might not be able to resupply that 110 until they're more readily available later on in the war. And it just keeps progressing in those 4-month chunks. And the missions do the same. So, there's spots where we're basically rolling dice, and it's telling you what your next mission's going to be. And then an airstrike, I believe, was the chart where it said, this year, this time frame, this is what your target should be. So we're randomly generating that stuff as we go along.
Yeah, that sounds similar. I mean, in DVG, you're randomly generating some stuff, but some stuff is it's canned to the scenario and the target card you pick and which scenario you end up with. So, like I said, there's probably some ability to cross-pollinate some of this stuff with what you guys are doing. But like I said, with Be Heaven Corsair Leader, it's like everything Pacific. It's got like every Pacific theater you can think of, from Pearl Harbor all the way through, Okinawa. So I think, I haven't exactly broken all of them out, but I think there's like 20 some odd campaigns in there, and each one of them has about 20 targets on each campaign map. So there's a lot of replayability there, a lot of ability to generate different campaigns. But I'm sure that there's something, I haven't looked at everything DVG has. Doug would be the one to ask on that, but if there was I don't know if they have any European stuff at all. I think just about everything they have is Pacific variant.
Yeah, not to the level for fighter stuff,
yeah,
the way that Corsair is. So, and Corsair obviously is leading to their expansion to Zero Leader to kind of tell the other side of the war. So all of a sudden you now have, decreasing pilot skill as the campaigns go on. You go, that doesn't help too much. But I don't know their status of what they're going to do for truly a European fighter one, because I don't think their B-17 one did fighter stuff. I think it was just bomber, but I don't know.
Yeah.
It's they've got so many different leader games, I can't keep them.
I noticed he posted a picture of them testing the Zero Leader. I think it was today or yesterday, but
yeah, I saw that.
And it had actual little zeros on flight stands. So with the counters laying around them.
I didn't see that. I saw
and I was like, because at first when I first looked at it, I was like, are those Blood Red Sky zeros that they put on flight stands?
So this is right.
They've got to be. He's pre-production on that.
On the bad friend that I am, I only sent you the games and didn't send you the models. So you could go on DVG and they have.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
So okay. So that makes sense.
I put all that stuff in the cart and I'm like, I like Chris, but I don't know that I like him that much.
No, dude, that game is super expensive to begin with. So I couldn't believe how much it cost when I looked it up. I was like,
you're like, what's he trying to get out of me? What, does he want to stay at my house for a week? What's going on? Oh, no, you can't sleep with my wife just because you bought me a game.
Oh, that'll just get us both in trouble.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. That wouldn't work out very well at all. So yeah, looking at B-17 leaders is all bomber kind of stuff. So
yeah, I was saying if you had like a freaking Stuka leader or a
When you
freaking
got fighter
Hurricane leader or
escorts,
something like
which
that, or
is-
109 leader, man, that would just be, that stuff would cross port like instantly. But if you go down the Pacific rabbit hole, like I said, a lot of this stuff we can use. I mean, it would be pretty neat just the way it kind of lays a lot of stuff out for you, because you can tell there's a lot of thought process that goes into it. I mean, just the various things on the island, the various types of missions. For everything I've read about the Pacific, a lot of these cards in the campaign, they marry up to kind of stuff that was really going on. So it's not like it's just thrown out there. There's a lot of research that went into it.
Yeah, and that I have to say, that's, like I said, that's one of the things that's really intrigued me about this. Getting more into the wargaming is I'm just I love airplanes, always have, but I've never really been a historian. So when I love going to air shows, but I go and I look at the engineering side of it, the machine side of it. So just learning more about this and listening to Brett talk about that stuff, it's just really cool diving into that realm of the wargaming community, I guess.
Yeah, Doug, you were asking earlier how we got the starting point for this whole thing, and that's probably it. It was all the work we've done for the Malta stuff and then the Stalingrad stuff, just reading all about these pilots and their exploits and all the crazy and tragic things that happened. That's probably really what was the primer, I guess, for getting interested in doing a campaign stuff, because I think without really acknowledging it, I was thinking, gosh, it sure would be fun to play this squadron through all these different theaters, and now we're doing it, right? So
yeah, and it's been a ton of fun. And I got to tell you, if I was in like a gaming group or had like once a week gaming meetups, this would just be awesome. I could see myself going home between each week and coming back with, new victory marks painted on them and stuff like that. And then, you paint that airplane up and that guy gets shot down. You're kind of like a real crew chief. Like, man, I can't believe I can't put this plane back on the board. I just spent an hour updating the paint scheme from last week, so just the continuation of it is really neat.
No, that sounds pretty cool. I'm looking forward to at least watching how the campaign goes while I'm sitting there trying to figure out the next stupid thing to do in Tabletop Simulator.
Yeah, I know that was the thing I was reading about Necromunda, that it seemed like so many people were so enthralled with when you listen to some of the casts about that, and they were just like, you take all this time and you build these gangs up, and you really take the time to make your gang look like who they are, and you've got like 20 guys, and then you're like, oh man, that model's out of this campaign for like ever. You spent all that time on it. So it adds that level of tension that you don't get when you're just throwing models on the board.
Welcome to the salty tears of role-playing gamers. You killed
absolutely,
my fighter.
Man.
My cleric
Absolutely.
is dead.
The closest thing I've played that this reminds me of from that, being invested with the individual models is Blood Bowl, where, you can lose guys and get knocked out of the campaign and stuff. It's like that kind of.
Yeah, I mean, when we were playing, in the Horus Heresy Elite down in Michigan, they did a little bit of campaign stuff, but it was like one character, where you would have a character. If you went to enough events with Ryan, you would actually get dog tags, and the dog tags would give you permanent abilities that you would apply to every campaign until that character died.
This is my Space Marine. He's special because he's a space wolf. He's got claws.
You roll up against some wickedly rolled up stuff. There was the one guy that played freaking Dark Mechanicum, and he had this Magos that was just absolutely freaking sick. And the funny thing was, in the gaming group, it became like this running rally cry of who was going to finally do this guy in.
oh, awesome. So you were like stinky role-playing gamers and heresy nerds all put together. Awesome.
Oh, you better believe it, man. It was
so sad that I missed this.
level 10.
Oh, thank goodness I wasn't invited. I'll go play with my little plastic airplanes that are unpainted. All right. Enough of that. Well, we've been talking for quite a while about this. I don't want to take away everyone's evening. I know we got a couple listener questions and some things to talk about at the end. But Steve, anything kind of in closing about campaigns that you want to make sure at least the listeners know?
No, I mean, I think it's just we covered a lot of it, and it's just really any way that you can get some personal investment, I guess, in a game like this. It just makes it so much more fun. It's funny how we've ended our games and you kind of walk away from the table and you're like, oh man, I wish I could have done that, or oh man, I should have pressed harder to kind of get that guy. I could have got him there. So it's just funny how you keep thinking of it, between games, and you're going to carry that stuff over. So just like you, I'm curious to see where it goes, but thanks a lot for having me on.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. No, glad to do it. Brett, any last thoughts on the campaign?
No, I'm just glad that we have Tabletop Simulator too, because Steve and I live, several states apart, and we're in lockdown, of course. So we're able to continue this thing and likely play on a pretty regular basis, at least through Tabletop Simulator. So that's fun. And at some point, I'm sure we'll be able to get together and actually put some real models on the table. But
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's been an opportunity to play way more games just very recently than I've been able to play really ever. So
that would be a really classic way to do it too, is you play online with somebody and then finally you guys meet up and then you have like kind of a grudge match where you're putting actual models on the table for
I thought you were going to say that they were going to go skipping down into the fields of poppies holding hands or something like that, because they finally had met in person. It's like 90 Day Fiance but with Tabletop Simulator. Okay, now that everyone's thoroughly disturbed by that image.
Yeah, really disturbed.
Yeah, I didn't know it was that type of podcast. You guys kind of...
Yeah, exactly. Oh, we have many disturbing images in this podcast.
Awesome.
But anyway.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, absolutely good to have you on. Well, moving on to some listener questions. So Brendan Bond sent us a couple questions as he discovered the Blood Red Skies Tabletop Sim mod through being a Tabletop Sim guy and was asking some questions. But obviously had asked, hey, we've got the current rule book that's out there, the basic PDF rule book, nothing for Airstrike yet, none of the scenarios and none of the advanced booklets. Is that stuff coming out? And then, asked likewise, how many more airplanes? What about MiG Alley? What other kind of things are going to be in there? So here's the good news and here's the bad news. The good news is all those things are fairly straightforward to digitize. Aircraft cards don't take too long. Rule books, real quick and easy. You can import PDFs straight into Tabletop Sim. Airplanes, I don't know. I think Steve and I can argue over how long it takes. Sometimes it's really easy, then sometimes we forget a 1 or a 0 somewhere accidentally, and it takes us hours to figure out what we've done wrong with an airplane model. But those things could be done. Right now, Warlord is not very enthusiastic about releasing more than just the basic the starter pack game, and not even releasing the extra rule books that haven't been that aren't in PDF format online. And they're thinking a little bit like a 1980s wargaming company, which they pretty much are in organization and in leadership. And they're trying to protect their IP. They're afraid that if everything gets out there, then no one will buy their miniatures or buy the packs of cards and things like that. And I think that most of the listeners of the podcast would disagree with that. And I know everyone who's been in the happy hours, the couple times we've talked about it, the overwhelming feeling is, just like Steve said earlier, the problem is playing Tabletop Sim actually makes me want to go out and buy more miniatures and buy different aircraft and play with these in real on the table. So what I'd say is, to anyone who wants more official, and I use the keyword official, Blood Red Skies, Tabletop Sim, things authorized by Warlord, please, 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 please email them at info@warlordgames.com. And if you can just address it to either Paul or to their management team and say, hey, love you guys, love the games you do. Trust us, playing with little pixels is not going to keep us from buying more resin miniatures and plastic miniatures and cards, because we love the physical game. I think they would be responsive to a groundswell of information. So that's kind of my plea for this pandemic lockdown. Everyone else is asking for a variety of different things: money, assistance, food. I'm asking for you to email Warlord Games and let them know how much you like Tabletop Sim, not because it helps me at all, but it helps me make a case for turning over more material officially to everyone. What I will also say is, once you buy those cards, you have all the information you need in front of you. It may not be in the game, but you know what your cards say. You can type that out on any of the game note cards in Tabletop Sim, and now you're not illegally importing someone else's IP. And if you don't take that IP and put it up for someone else to download, it's really kind of a gray area. So if you just import a card, you and your buddies play with that card, and you're not putting it out in the workshop in Steam, that's really kind of still falls under a little bit of the fair use clauses out there. So absolutely go play some more games. Play with different models, different aircraft. Ring out Tabletop Sims Blood Red Skies version. Break it and let me know what you broke, and I'll make Steve fix it because I can never fix these things.
Well, that's a good point. You're constantly coming out with new stuff. I mean, you have a plan. You're still releasing stuff on about a weekly basis.
Yeah, because I'm behind. So I'm behind, and so I haven't released everything I want.
Well, I only say that because I hope that if people get on there, they don't think that if it's imperfect in any way from their perspective, that it's done. I mean, you put it out purposely with the idea like, this is now playable, go, and you'll continue to make the updates as you have the time to make the changes and the additions.
Well, and that's why I kind of hope people read the text in the kind of the call out box beneath the mod, because I'll tell you what I'm working on next. And some of those things have been in that future plans section, like Ace traits. Yeah, Ace traits is the last thing I've been getting to put those in. The nice thing is, I think, other than some new cool models and some changes that'll come out in version 2.0, I don't think there's a whole lot on the plate between me and the Ace cards. So hopefully Ace traits will get in there. And initially, yes, you will have to play with generic aces. If you want other aces, bombard Warlord. Please tell Warlord, release me some Ace cards. Just understand from their perspective, they have Ace cards in boxes with little plastic and resin airplanes, so they tend to think if you have the Ace card, you won't buy the kit. I don't know. Most of us in Blood Red Skies seem to be collection gamers, in that we'll still go buy the card just to have the physical card and to have a model with it. So, Chris, I think you and I have fallen afoul of that a number of times.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there has not been a Blood Red Skies release other than some of like the extraneous RAF bombers and stuff like that I haven't just gone out and got. I don't play Germans. I've got just about everything the Germans have. I've got every German ace there is. And it's just because I someday, I want the ability that if somebody comes over that doesn't play Blood Red Skies, I'm going to paint up enough Germans that I can push a friendly table out there and somebody can pick whatever they want, and we can play just about any era and have at it. And I'm a collection nerd too. I mean, it's like the black books from Horus Heresy. Do you need them? Absolutely not to play the game. You can have a couple of red books and you can play the game. But guess what? We buy all these black books. And it's the same thing with Blood Red Skies. And I think they're going to realize that over time. But like you said, they're a traditional 1980s gaming company. So it's going to take them some time to be comfortable with it.
Yeah, so. And I think a lot of it is just communicating with them how gaming has changed. And I think there is a lot more collection gaming than there used to be. And I don't know if GW drove that through the Horus Heresy or what in the game industry drove people to do that. But I know I have a lot of aces that I bought, not because I needed an extra airplane, but because I wanted the ace card. And I wanted to be able to field that guy with the right disc on his pilot stand and not be proxying an ace. I'm like, I'd take whatever traits they've given him and let's try that. I think it's cool.
IP gets dicey with World War II too. I mean, it's when you say intellectual property,
with everybody.
With anything World War II or anything with historical gaming and where you're using an actual human being that lived.
Oh yeah, exactly.
It gets dicey. The only thing that your IP really has is the numbers that you're assigning to it and a trait that you've assigned to it, and the art layout. True.
So that's why I counsel everyone: if you took all of that text and you typed it in the little note card function in Tabletop Sim, you ain't breaking nobody's laws. No. So I hate for us to have to do that. I want people to know there's a workaround. I wish there didn't have to be a workaround. I know we all wish that corporations behave differently than corporations do, especially businesses that run on a tight budget line like Warlord.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where I would hope that through public interaction and the groundswell of people that have at least told us how much they like Tabletop Sim, Blood Red Skies, that Warlord would really see it as something that enhances the Blood Red Skies brand. And
we've all got to kind of be realistic right now, too, in a period of what looks like is going to be global contraction. Disposable income is going to be at a premium. So you're going to see gaming companies being very careful with what they're doing. So think about that from the standpoint of, money's dollars and people's jobs. So they're all going to be very considerate of their employees before they're considerate of other things.
Yeah, I know Steve's worked with a little bit of this stuff.
These guys have been great. So I mean, so far the fact that Tabletop Simulator is up there, even if it's just the starter pack to start with, I mean they've gone out there. So they supported that when you guys said you were going to do it. So that was incredible.
Yeah, I just wanted to hop in here quick because I was listening to that, but there is not a chance in the world I would have ever purchased a single RAF model other than the starter set if it was not for Tabletop Sim. Like it would never have happened. I have no interest in that sort of realm of the war, and it's really, I mean, Hurricane Squadron coming, more Spitfires coming, and I would have never ever purchased them. So just giving me the chance to play them and dive into it has totally they've gotten more of a customer out of me.
Dude, I had walked away from Warhammer completely for 14 years until Dawn of War came out. And installing one computer game on my computer has, an entire trophy case of freaking 30K and 40K miniatures later. Trust me, the computer stuff works. it reinfects. It really because does, it's so casual. It pulls guys in that have walked away. Because it's so casual, and then it rekindles some things that you had in you from younger, and the thing is, it's rekindling things in people with more disposable income, which has been my issue.
Yeah, that becomes my problem. Is I dispose of my disposable income, and now
exactly in droves.
I can't go buy any of those. Yeah, So I think I think the thing is if the gaming community cannot descend to grognardism or not descend to 40K playerism of let's just bash the company because companies have to make money and we don't like that. Well, guess what? That's what companies do. That's how they produce this stuff, is they pay people to do it. I think that if we come to that realization and we kind of try to be good stewards of the IP, they try to be good stewards of being able to give us things in batches and not just know that they can't give us an entire data dump, then I think that there's an opportunity for the community and Warlord to benefit. We get to play with a lot of different things virtually. They know they're probably going to sell a handful of those to those of us that just can't resist. Once we've moved MiGs and Sabres around the table, we know we're going to paint them. But I think it's going to require a little bit of time and a little bit of convincing. And as I've said before on the podcast, that's my problem and Andy's problem. I need everyone else's help. But don't think that a week doesn't go by that Andy or I aren't interceding with people at Warlord to say, hey, remember you said you might think about it? Have you thought about it? And the answer is no. Okay, got it. The answer's still no. But I will say this. There are a lot of other cool things that kind of touch Blood Red Skies or are things Andy's worked with and other game designers that he's partnered with before. So there may be some other interesting things coming to Tabletop Sim that hopefully I won't be coding because it'll actually be coded correctly. But I've seen some of the emails between Andy and some of the game designers he's worked with, and people are starting to realize the value of Tabletop Sim to get people into their game that previously you had to find someone to play with, find someone who knew the rules, someone who was actually good at the game and enjoyed it, and then that could get you into the whole addiction. So. But anyway, I've been talking way too long. It's now over an hour of us doing the podcast. I want to thank everybody for listening to us, and definitely thank Steve for coming on the program, talking about campaigns, and Chris and Brett for continuing to take my abuse for another evening.
So one thing I wanted to do before Steve got off of here tonight, because I haven't had enough ability to publicly thank him, but the 3 SM79s that sit in my freaking trophy case painted that never made it on the table this Adepticon, thank you so much for those models, Steve. They are absolutely amazing.
Yeah, man, I'm glad you like them. And it's funny, actually, looking at them, those were some of the first Blood Red Skies models I did. I'm actually tempted to go back and redo them now and clean them up a little bit, but
dude, they're sick. They're gorgeous. I mean, when I painted them up, when I got them in the mail from Brett, I was like, okay, because Brett kind of sent me a picture, a cell phone picture. I was like, okay, we're going to see what we got here. The panel lines, they were easier to paint than a lot of the stuff I've gotten from AIM. It was a really, really stellar job that was done on those. And then I couldn't believe it when I got them. I was like, oh, there's torpedoes in here. Like, I noticed the torpedoes were sticking to the bottom of the plane. I was like, he pre-magnetized all the torpedoes. I was like, wow.
Yeah, I mean, I'm bumming. I want to see them.
Wow.
And it's funny now because I had not played Airstrike when I made those, so I wasn't sure how the laden tokens would work and all that. So now, like, I could just, man, I'm psyched to make some more stuff. Even moving on, putting, wing mounts on Corsairs or on P-47s or P-38s or rocket mounts, stuff like that. You could really go all out.
Yeah, I saw an IL-2 1946, which is an online simulator for World War II the other night, and it had a bunch of HE-111s with torpedoes rigged underneath that were attacking British battleships. It was some gorgeous footage. I mean, I really appreciate those models, man. Thank you so much for putting the time into those.
It's my pleasure.
Well, guys, thanks for hanging out in the podcast, and thanks to all the listeners. If you have questions, please shoot them to us either on Facebook, Inside the Ready Room, or if you want to, go ahead and get on the website. We've got a contact form there as well. But feel free to drop us your questions. I appreciate all the listener questions. We'll try to get to them when we can and get you the answers that you want. Thanks again, and we'll talk to you all next week.